world was caught off guard when a mysterious virus began spreading rapidly across the globe. At first, people thought it was just a typical flu, but soon it became clear that this was something much more sinister. The virus caused people to turn into flesh-eating zombies, and it was spreading quickly. As the virus continued to spread, governments and military forces struggled to contain it. Panic and chaos erupted as people tried to escape the cities and find safety. But it was too late. The zombies had taken over, and the world as we knew it was gone. Survivors had to band together and find ways to survive in this new world. They scavenged for food, weapons, and shelter while avoiding hordes of zombies that roamed the streets. Some people tried to find a cure or a way to reverse the effects of the virus, but it seemed like a lost cause. As the years went by, the survivors learned to adapt to the new world. They created their own communities and formed alliances to protect themselves from the zombies and other dangers. They learned to live off the land and rely on their own skills and ingenuity. But even after years of surviving, the threat of the zombies still loomed. The survivors knew that they could never let their guard down, for the zombies were always out there, waiting for their next meal. The world would never be the same again, but the survivors were determined to keep fighting and find a way to rebuild. Despite the challenges and dangers, the survivors of the zombie apocalypse continued to persevere. They learned to live in a world without the luxuries of modern society and adapted to the harsh realities of survival. Many survivors banded together to form communities and settlements, pooling their resources and skills to create a safer and more sustainable way of life. They worked together to scavenge for food and supplies, fortify their homes, and defend themselves from the constant threat of zombie attacks. However, not all communities were created equal. Some became tyrannical and abusive, taking advantage of their power and resources to oppress and exploit others. These communities became known as raiders, preying on weaker settlements and taking what they wanted by force. The survivors who refused to bow down to the raiders banded together to form a resistance movement, fighting back against the raiders and defending their communities. The resistance fighters became known as freedom fighters, and they waged a guerrilla war against the raiders, attacking their supply lines and sabotaging their operations. Despite their best efforts, the freedom fighters faced many setbacks and losses. The raiders were better equipped and better organized, and they seemed to have an endless supply of soldiers willing to fight and die for their cause. But the freedom fighters refused to give up. They knew that the fate of humanity was at stake, and they were willing to fight to the bitter end to defend their way of life. And so the war raged on, with no end in sight, as the survivors struggled to find hope in a world overrun by the undead.